All right. Welcome to the JALTCALL Podcast. I'm your host for the day, and I'm joined today by David Kluge, formerly of Nanzan and Kinjo Gakuen Universities. David currently works as an adjunct lecturer at Chuko University in Nagoya as he eases himself into retirement after an illustrious career in which we're going to learn about today. David was the original founder of the group that became the JALTCALL SIG. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Brian. It's good to be with you again.
Yeah, so I first discovered you when I was looking into Kinjo University, which is near to where I live, and you were working there, you were teaching and researching. Can you tell us a bit about your time at Kinjo?
Well, it was kind of exciting because a lot of things were happening with the World Wide Web, and so Kinjo was really interested in starting a call lab. And they had actually started out with Fujitsu computers,
Hmm.
but we were able, and I had to teach students, all of the English majors, how to use Twin Star word processor, where you had to put all of the coding marks by keyboard. It was it really uh it was really, quite interesting. But but another professor there, Professor Nakata, who was the French teacher, but very, very interested in Macintoshes. And so we together started a Mac lab that was very, very top line at the time.
How
And it
many
was exciting.
how many computers would you have had in your lab at that time?
I There were uh 60.
Wow, that's quite an outlay in the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, and they're all beautiful, the beautiful multicolored Mac. And the thing that was interesting was we didn't put them in rows, like a phalanx, military formation.
Hmm.
We put them so that we could walk down the complete row, a long row, and you can see the computers on the right and the left of you. So you didn't have to. It was just really well thought out at the time.
Easier for seeing what's going on with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
student screen. Uh, Sounds good. I used to work for Nihon Gaikoku go Senmon Gaku in Takanobaba in Tokyo, and we had a computer lab there, which had the same kind of setup, but also there was a teacher monitoring system on the teacher's computer where you could see what each student had on their screen at the time, so you could see when students were kind of like off task. But I think these days, I think in my classrooms, it's quite difficult to see what the students are doing. It's Classroom setup can be quite tricky, especially with the number of screens that folk have going now. So, how many years were you teaching at Kinjo for?
Oh, just a short bit of time. I think it was 22 years.
And so, we'll go on to that a little bit later. So, 22 years at Kinjo, and then you made a move to another university after that. That was
Uh,
Nanzan.
Nanzan, right? Nanzan University, and that also very much was very much computer based learning.
So, Nanzan University is what kind of size is Nanzan for the people that are not familiar with Nagoya area?
It's about I'd say about 9,000 students. It's a pretty big university.
One of
It's known for its language education, basically.
right. So it's one of the bigger, more successful universities in the
I
country.
think the only university that is really above us is probably Majo.
Which of course is mine. Yeah, I was actually I was at Major just last week I went back in for we had an interview, a small speak by a Professor Noyori, who was the two I think it was the 2001 Nobel Peace Prize winner for chemistry. So he was talking about research and fundamentals. Luckily, he didn't talk too much about the hydrocarbons, which he got his Nobel Prize for, because it was very, very difficult and very technical. But so I was very fortunate. Yeah, it was my first time to speak with a Nobel Peace Prize winner, so I was quite happy with that. Yeah, major was quite a big, but of course my faculty.
I'm sorry, he was a Nobel Science
Yeah,
Prize,
it
not
was.
peace.
Yeah, sorry, did I say physics? Yeah,
No, you said Peace Prize. You
Yeah,
said
Nobel Prize for chemistry.
physics.
For
Yeah.
chemistry. For
Yeah,
chemistry.
chemistry.
It's chemistry. Yeah, it's a hydrocarbons. He worked out how to.
Right.
Yeah, what he talked about was how when we do research, we have to do something that is applicable. And of course, in sciences, talk about applied science. And he said, it's great having discoveries and good ideas, but unless it really helps humanity, you need to try and look at yourself a bit again. So I think for me as a language teacher, I kind of thought, well, yeah, how does my teaching and my research, progress the students that are under my control, or within my trust. So it was quite inspiring. I think it's very important to hear people, and to know that you need to reset. Sometimes you kind of you get caught up in projects and you have to come back to those fundamentals.
Well, the thing is, I agree with you completely. And I feel that I was fortunate in that when I started university in my undergrad, I was a chemistry major, math minor. So I come from the sciences. And I changed to the related fields of English and theater. But then in my third year or so, um, it I've been interested in computers from the very beginning. And when I went through grad school, I took the educational technology classes that they had.
Mm.
When I was in grad school, if you can believe this, and I'm sure it's hard to believe, but I had top of the line Macintosh SE, and it had, wait for it, 20 megabytes of memory, of storage. You could, and it was really, really high class because it had a floppy disk drive.
Yeah, a 3.5 inch floppy
That's
disk.
right. That's right.
Kind of like the little hard disks.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you can buy them. You can buy a Mac like that, an SE30, on Mercari for 140,000 yen, which is quite steep.
Yeah, it is.
Like still, but yeah, I think when I was at dare I say I'm a bit younger than you, so when we were at school, they were the screens, or they were the computers that we learned to do a bit of programming, very, very basic programming on, back in the day. Right, okay, so we're gonna move on a little bit. So just for all the listeners out there, so David Kluge has taught English in the US for 4 years and in Japan for 36 years, 32 of them at university level so far. He's co-authored 3 books, two for National Geographic or Cengage Learning, and one for Macmillan Learning. So I would say now that the current areas of interest are readers' theatre, oral interpretation, speech, presentation, drama, debate, oral communication, composition, cooperative learning, and materials writing. Did I leave anything out?
I'm interested in music
And music.
also. So how the role of music in the classroom, which is a specific interest. And I just thought I'd tell you that a new book is coming out April 1st. It's out already actually, and it is in my life. Uh, it's a new edition of In My Life.
And what kind of book is In My Life?
It is electronic or paper scrapbook based learning.
Ah, right. Okay. So I'm going to talk about that kind of like a little bit later. So actually, I use your textbook. So you wrote the one of the National Geographic books was power writing.
Yeah.
I use that for our third year writing course. So you wrote that with Matthew Taylor, who's also at Kinjo Gakuin University. So that's a really good book. Although it's APA, what, sixth edition, APA is now rolled on to seventh edition, but we are continuing to use that book. It's a very good book. It's very good. I think a lot of people appreciate using that one.
My wife appreciates the people who buy the book.
Of course, of course, of course, of course. So you've also written very extensively on creativity. I mean, extensively. I counted 83 academic papers on creativity, writing research papers. So of course that textbook that we use is about writing research papers. So technology assisted language learning and every kind of speaking imaginable, like especially the public speaking debate, the oral production, and more. So, can you tell us a little bit about the academic writing that you've done over the years?
I'm basically interested in teacher development, professional development.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what I'm trying to do is trying to make sure that the teachers in the language classes know how to use computers, help the students learn what they need to learn.
So we discussed this idea of students' preparedness when they were coming into to university. So over the years, how do you think it's changed or it's not changed about how ready students are, how like kind of like computer literate they are, you know, like before they get to the university stage or when they arrive at that on the first day?
It's difficult to say because, well, for example, in my classes for performance, in terms of performance, I had the students use PowerPoint. And at the beginning, they know nothing about PowerPoint. It's really, I was really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is once I start them on the basics of PowerPoint, it's exponentially, they just explode. And then they have these absolutely wonderful PowerPoint slide shows
Mm-hmm.
that that are beautiful, but also not too crowded. They
Mm-hmm.
have they basically have they've been able to absorb the idea that there should be basically one word or one phrase or one illustration um, on a slide. Go minimalize on the amount of material on the slide so that you can explain it in English just based on the prompt that's on the slide. And I think that's I think a lot of teachers giving presentations could benefit from that.
Yeah.
So the difference is I was really surprised they don't know PowerPoint, but the difference is they are used to using the computer or their smartphones enough so that they can easily catch on
Mm.
much more so than at the beginning. And the something that's similar from way back when we started was there's still problems with touch typing, keyboard skills.
Right, yeah. So in the last podcast that we did, we talked about sort of getting students started and kind of like skills. I explained that I use BBC Bite Size typing, which is a free BBC, of course, do all the school stuff in Britain. And yeah, and I encourage my students, so the ones who are very poor at typing or can't type, they start off just doing like middle row, and then there's like a few steps up, and it's nice and fun. So, yeah, typing, touch typing, is a great skill to have that really speeds up students' lives and save them so much time. Now, the JALTCALL conference that's coming up now in 2025, the theme is Call for All. And I was looking back through a paper of yours from 2003, where you wrote about ubiquitous learning opportunities. So it was learning via web video on mobile phones, which is
Yes.
something I also wrote about because I had read your paper and I wrote on about it. So in that paper, you were analysing mobile devices for learning when people were using 3G phones. Of course, that's third gen phones by like companies like Ericsson, Sony, Compaq, and Fujitsu that you mentioned before. And probably like one of my first phones would have been an NTT Docomo, so the Do Communications Mobile, and even Nintendo Game Boy, which is still used now. I guess the new iteration of the Game Boy is the Switch. But the ubiquitous learning opportunities. So, but back then in your paper, so you said that the students reported the best parts of using the technology were helpful for study. It was fun, specific animations, and ubiquity to study anywhere. So
Yeah.
I think like now that is much more, like ubiquitous. I think that what we call it now, the Internet of Things, uh,
IoT.
IoT. Yeah. So how much are you using? So as well as just a computer, and what other technologies featuring in your life in your teaching these days?
Well, basically, I use the computer as a just as a basic tool. I mean, in a sense, it's I think what's going to happen is call will be so common
Mhm.
that the area called call may disappear into the molecules of the classroom because we don't have whiteboard assisted language learning. We don't have pencil assisted language learning. Those are the tools that we use to learn. And so all of a sudden, it's not saying that jolt call is going to disappear. I'm saying that it'll become so ubiquitous in the learning environment that all teachers will have to be able to use call. And the one thing that I really liked until last year was the flip grid
Mm,
flip,
yeah.
and then it's disappeared.
Yeah, so Flip, of course, was a video-based service where students could record their video and then students could reply with video to the video. I used it for our Friday afternoon discussion classes to great effect. That was basically the students' homework. Each week they had to
Yeah,
make somewhere
yeah.
between a 2 to 3 minute review, not a, sort of summation video of what they had garnered from the lesson. But yeah, when Flip Grid became Flip, it was only Flip for 1 year, and then it was very quickly just canned. So that, of course, that's owned by Google, right? I think it was Google.
No,
Was it
uh,
Microsoft?
I think it's Microsoft.
Is it Microsoft? So yeah, I think we could not find a quick alternative for that.
No, I know.
So what in my classes, I just said to the students, just record the video raw on your camera option on your phone, and then just upload it to the Google Classroom. And it's not as good and it's not exciting for the students, but it is effective. So I think a lot of teachers were, quite missed the flip.
Yeah, I tried like last year. I tried. I switched from Flip to Blogger,
Mm,
and that also it became extinct in the middle of the year. So it's this coming year, I'm going to be using Google Drive, just having the students put their homework straight into the different folders on a Google Drive.
Welcome to my world. Yeah, it's all I'm doing.
Yeah,
All Google these days.
in a sense things are going backwards. I thought Flip was superb, uh, and then they said, well, I think we're not going to support that anymore. We're going to put it into fold it into some of our own other software packages, apps, and
I think a lot of these things come in waves and they last for a while, and we surf it for a bit and then we have to move on. Right? Okay, we're going to move on. So join us again for part two, where David and I are going to move on and talk about role-playing games and student personalization. Hi, welcome back to the JALTCALL Podcast. I'm the host of the day. I'm Brian Gallagher, and I'm joined with David Kluge. We're going to continue on. So, David, in the first part, we were talking about Flipgrid, which then became Flip, which is now defunct. So, I think I made the mistake of saying I thought it was Google, but as you rightly said, it was Microsoft that took over. So I had a quick check. So it was founded in 2014 by an associate professor at the University of Minnesota. And then, yeah, Microsoft took them over in 2018. And I guess maybe because it wasn't making money, I would only assume that's why they canned it. So
I think actually they wanted to fold it into their own suite of
Microsoft Suite,
yeah,
Microsoft, uh,
classroom. Yes.
right. So when you were doing the remote learning, what system did you use at your institution? You were at
Uh,
Nan's, I think,
you, yes, Donza, and also I'm still using it at for my classes. Half of my classes are Zoom. They are uh, at Chukio. So I use Zoom, and I have my own. I purchased an account, a professional account, so that I have unlimited time for Zoom, and I I have found that Zoom is closer to where I think a JALT call classroom should be like.
right. Okay. So yeah, that Microsoft it integrated the feature into Teams for education.
Yep, that's
Uh,
right.
was
Yeah.
right. So before we were talking about the mobile phones, Docomo and Foma. So that was back 22 years ago. So of course, several problems that existed then. Many of them have been improved, but some still exist today. And some of those are things like poor audio and screen sizes that are too slow, or sorry, too small, slow downloads, poor video quality, obscure language use, and more. But in your studies that you had done back then, the student feedback seemed to almost always be very positive, and the courses were always very uh, enjoyable. So what do you?
It was a new thing. It was a new toy.
Novelty?
It was the start. It was really just before. It was the start of the smartphone uh Jedi, the era of smartphones. It wasn't a smartphone in and of itself, but it was the precursor. And so the students thought it looked cool. It looked like it looked like a science fiction device, and it so they and at that time I was working with at an all women's university, and even they, I realized women were as interested in new things in technology as the men were. And so the thing is, what we did was we were doing activities for looking trying to use all of the new bells and whistles.
Mm.
So one of the activities that we had tried that was quite interesting was doing a scavenger hunt or road rally, basically, and where you had to get hints, go around the campus, take a picture of where you take a picture of where you went, send the picture back to the home office so that they would verify that you actually were at the spot, and then they would give you the next hint to follow. So just really kind of things that you couldn't do in a regular classroom.
Right, right, right. So I mean, it's very creative. I know Mirasa Aliza there when she was down in Osaka that she was doing that with augmented
Right,
reality.
right.
But yeah, it's a great activity to do. So
But you
of course,
couldn't, but they couldn't imagine. Students couldn't imagine doing that until they had the the phone, and then
mm,
in a sense, it was small, but it was
mm,
um, but I think it should be called tall technology assisted language learning.
right, 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 right. So so in the courses that you have created, and you've created a lot of courses over your years. So one of the courses that I taught uh, at Kinjo Gakuin when I was there, which was created by you, the concept, which I think you alluded to before, it was a class where students needed to maintain a weekly journal that went back and forth to the teacher at intervals. And I think you had me give the students, or the students made a scrapbook, but there was an audio cassette which the students recorded their voice, and then that went backwards and forwards so you could check on it. So of course that technology, of course, is instantaneous now when
Yeah,
students like add in a file. But
but
that
what one of the things though with that we called partner taping,
mm,
we purposely used old technology because as technology became more and more advanced,
mm,
we bought a lot of small portable tape recorders
right.
and cassette tapes because no one's going to steal a cassette tape recorder because because it's so clunky and old fashioned. Right now, that has been changed at Kinjo, and now they use their smartphones
Right, right.
um, for that.
I think that's really important to so that whole idea of the design for learning, that you've chosen a technology with a specific reason that it's not going to be an item that is going to suffer theft. Like it's going to be an item that is quite robust. Like cassettes can be thrown into bags, and like they don't have to be cared for so carefully. The student artwork though, the students I found when they had this stuff in, there was an incredible amount of time and effort put into their scrapbooks.
Yeah. So we're coming up with a new textbook based on that same idea that was called In My Life,
Mhm.
and based on the scrapbook, so that the student's life becomes the content of the course.
Mhm.
The students are the knower. The teacher doesn't know what that student's life is about. So the student's life becomes the knower. They become the knower. They show to all of us who don't know.
Mm.
But the thing is, the second edition, of course, offers the option of going digital, full digital.
Mm. Mm. Who that book? Who's going to be the ship and the publisher that you're doing that?
That's Nellie's
Nellie's.
Nell, Nellie's. It's the Shane Group. Shane, but Nellie's is the bookseller.
Right, okay. Nellie's English book. So of course we'll put a link into the show notes for people, and of course would encourage them to have a look at that offering that you've got there. So
I'll pay you later on that.
yeah, I think student artwork and student personalization is something that we can be at risk of losing if there's too much technology in place. So I think there's still I encourage students uh, to keep some records, some notes, and to do some things that they are very much kind of like hands-on like that. So I think there's so much consumption now, and there's less creation. And I think that
Yeah,
creativity is something that I think is incredibly important that we should, as teachers, be inspiring students to be, like they want to do it. We just have to give them a platform that they can do it. Now, in all your courses seem to include or even require elements of creativity uh,
yeah,
in your teaching, right?
yes. And that kind of fits in with what I said before. I would like the call classroom should just stop existing, and it's just the regular classroom.
Ubiquitous.
And yes, exactly, so that you don't have to pull out new machines
Mhm.
when you want to do another activity. It should be just no matter where you are, you should be able to just use the access the internet. I mean, the dream before was wearable computers, but
Hmm.
that's kind of like the wearable classroom. It is just surrounding you, and so I um, I really like in that sense Zoom uh, Zoom classes
Mm.
were really good because students could use the camera for doing their own special effects. I mean, it was interesting that you could see students who would when they go off camera, they just put their hand over they
Like
would just
like a
disappear, put
yeah.
their hand over the camera.
Mm.
That they would use the backgrounds where when the students were doing a performance, like a reader's theater or something, they would choose the same background. If they were doing um, Harvest Moon by Neil Young, they're doing the oral interpretation of Harvest Moon by Neil Young, and they chose the background of a harvest moon so that all students were on the screen with the harvest moon, and they were just really quite creative in using the tools of Zoom to do almost instant production of a video.
Right. Yeah. So it's their own TV studio.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
last year at the JALTCALL conference, so I invited Takako Akawa to join us, and it's because I had seen her present in a conference in Osaka where she had cleverly used the Nintendo Wii remote controller plus
yeah,
an Xbox camera in order to establish a field of view where students could actually they could have three layers. They could have background, the student in front of the camera, and then they could actually put stuff in the foreground too. So a student could literally put themselves into the scene. So there was three layers. So when you looked at it on the board, it was a full experience. Like so, if students could say, for example, we're going to the supermarket, and the role play is we're going to buy some food. How much is it, etc. Here's the money. Thank you very much. And I thought this is incredible because they were only using the Xbox camera. And so nice little bit of software. So that was a project that she ran. Of course, she was at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in Boston, right? Where is your hometown? Where are you from?
I'm from Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Whereabouts is that in the States?
Wisconsin. Well, it is right alongside the west side of the state is right along the Mississippi River, and just the southeastern side of the state is near Chicago.
Chicago, right? Okay. I think listeners should have some idea of where that is. Now, I want to go on to another course. So, of course, I want to stay with the theme of creativity, because you've created so many things. And one of the other courses that you had that I had come across was a course where there was a cliffhanger at the end of every lesson. Can you tell us a bit about that kind of format that you had?
Well, what happened was, um, we had storytelling. It was basically a storytelling class, and um, it was basically, you tell a story, and then you end, and you say, oh, you come to the really exciting part, and oh, uh, class is over. Tune in next time for the end of the story. So basically, it was I would do that, and then I'd ask the students then to create their own stories with cliffhangers, so that would go over at least two class periods.
Right. So I think it's really it's a great idea, and I think it builds continuity from class to class, and it helps keep students engaged. And because I worry now that like engagement, like when we have too much technology and too many things going on, that we're at risk of losing like the students' attention. The world is a kind of busy
Yeah,
place these.
exactly. The thing is, the problem with I mean, I think everybody has realized that the problem with PowerPoint is that you recognize the backgrounds, you
Mm,
recognize the images and things like that, and and that the software is really helpful, but it it means that the students don't have to work for that, creating those images, finding the right image. They just, that the basically the software says, oh, you said this word, okay, here's some of the um images that we have on stock. And then so everybody, all of a sudden it becomes too packaged.
mm.
So what really is interesting is when the students can create their own images, find really interesting images, or do their own drawing, on using uh, using a pad
Right.
that they can. It's just it's that whole balance between being automated and not becoming an automaton. So the thing is, you want to really keep on making sure that they have that element of creativity.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to try and move on to another part. So you do a number of role plays, and I've seen you present on role plays. I've actually been involved in some of your dramatic role plays. So, of course, role play games are the study of gaming, or ludology. So I've written some paper on it. I know, like James York, who is going to be this year's conference uh, co-site chair. He writes extensively on gaming and learning through gaming. So role play games in learning. I think you had written before about ones like Biohazard and Sim City, but unlike more controlled language learning activities, role plays can either be a lot of fun or fail miserably. So what do you think can cause role plays to fail?
I think basically, if you don't allow time for the students to prepare.
Mm.
Now, for example, when we did a textbook called so we had a textbook called In My Life, which was the scrapbook, but we had the role play version, and that was called We Can Work It Out.
We can work it out.
I think you're seeing a kind of like a trend here, Beatles song titles. But Um, the thing that we had was there was a there was a there was a conflict, so that the conflict had to be resolved. And so if there's no conflict, then the role play says, let's do this. Oh, okay, let's do that. That's fine. Finished. I mean,
Mm.
because this is Japan, and you want to, you want to come to agreement. You don't want so much. But if there's a little bit of conflict, like say, where do you want to eat? Well, how about Chinese? Oh, I had Chinese yesterday. I really would like some Mexican. And the other person says, well, I don't like spicy food. So then you have to come to an agreement. That's when you don't have that conflict, you have no interesting thing coming up. And like one of the things that we did in the role play at Kinjo was a person came in and said, they were going to decide of where to go for vacation, and when they met, they said, the one student says, "How are you?" And the other student said, "I'm fine. I just swam all the way from Australia." It's like, what is that? What is that? Everybody just laughed, like, what is she talking about? She said, "Yeah, my arms are really tired." Just like, just it was just like,
Creativity. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So actually, I've got a paper that's been a long burner that I'm writing on ludonarrative dissonance in video games, and the concept that a lot of people play games thinking that they have freedom, but knowing that actually all the games are programmed, which therefore means that there are only a set amount of ways that the game can end. So of course, if we allow students kind of like that freedom for it to be open-ended, yeah, they can come up with some really creative, kind of crazy stuff.
one book that Cengage, the precursor to
Graphic, right?
National Geographic Learning, was called Our Town, where the students would get together and create their own community and play parts of the community. So it was not uh, it was not so much a game as it was uh, live live action role play and a LARP. And they had to, what kind of community do they want to create, and then there's a problem that comes up. They need to have different skills, and they go through the whole. So each person chooses what character they want to play, and in some sense, it was like the questions that they had to ask each other was ask themselves. I mean, is what do I want to do in my future? That's the kind of role I will take in the community.
And
And
it's
then you say, okay, now then they had to create the actual the buildings, the layout, the whole thing. It was they had complete control, like you were talking about. They had complete control over building their universe.
right. Okay, so similar to like the Sim City, but
Yeah. That's
plus
that's
alpha,
why
plus alpha, plus alpha.
that's we had talked about Sim City, but my drama background also said Our Town was a very, very popular probably one of the most popular plays performed in high schools all around.
So that was
uh
Thornton Wilder's.
Thornton Wilder, yes.
Uh,
But the thing is, it was not just creative, but it was cooperative, collaborative.
which is what we're
One
looking for in.
one class at Nanzan Junior College at the Irinaka campus was that they had to create their own society, and the girls, it's a junior college, so all the students were women, and they said that they they had a society where each woman would have six husbands. One would be would be handsome. The other one would be a good cook. The other one would be rich. It was just like they'd have a whole, and you think, and they had created the entire society, and then they did the role play. It was hell for the guy, for me being the only guy there, but it was really, really interesting. It's this whole thing of as you say, letting the students control, create their world.
So I think that's a great message to end on for today. David Kluge, you're a legend in my eyes. Thank you very much for joining us.
You
today.
too. You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll see you next time on the JALTCALL podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.